Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Mount Pleasant Baptist Church. A few of us have already met this morning. We enjoyed a virtual breakfast together and we prayed together before the service. If you missed out on that, please join us next time we meet, usually around 9 o'clock on Sunday mornings on Zoom. If you're a visitor, you're just looking in, we're really glad that you've joined us, and we hope that the songs that have been chosen and the message that Belle will share this morning will really encourage you in these challenging times. Look at our website, Facebook page 2, that's Mount Pleasant Baptist Church, Pembroke. See what we get up to as a church when we do eventually get through everything that's going on. We'd love for you to join us at the church. We meet at Grove School on Sundays at 10:30. I'm going to pray before we begin the service and just ask that God would make himself very real, even though we're apart, as we share this service together this morning. Father, thank you that you are the living God, and that you're real and that you're alive, and that you make a difference in our lives. Thank you that we can gather this morning together. And I pray, Father, for everyone listening in, that we would experience your very real presence, comfort, peace. Father, all the things that you do in amazing ways in our lives. In Jesus' name, amen.
In Christ alone, my hope is found. He is my light, my strength, my song. This cornerstone, this solid ground, firm through the fiercest drought and storm. What heights of love, what depths of peace, when fears are stilled, when striving cease. My comforter, my all in all, here in the love of Christ I stand. In Christ alone, who took on flesh, fullness of God in helpless pain, this gift of love and righteousness, scorned by the ones he came to save, till on that cross, as Jesus died, the wrath of God was satisfied. For every sin on him was laid, here in the death of Christ I live. There in the ground his body lay, light of the world by darkness slain, then bursting forth in glorious day,
Join the sea. Greetings from the Douglas family in Nepal.
As a British trained GP, I've been involved in medical education in Patton Academy of Health Sciences for the last number of years, and recently I've particularly been involved in palliative care training and have linked with INF Fellowship in training and developing a course for improving communication skills in caring for people at the end of their lives. Recently, as you know, we're all facing the COVID-19 pandemic, and although cases at the moment are low in Nepal, all medical education has stopped and the hospital has been gearing up for a potential epidemic of COVID in Kathmandu. So I've been involved in trying to help prepare the hospital for an increase in need in palliative care as we anticipate large numbers of people coming to the end of their life as a result of this virus, and unfortunately we don't have great capacity for ICU and ventilator care. So end of life support and symptom support is going to be particularly important at that time. I've also been connecting with HDCS hospitals in Rukam and Lamjung to try and encourage their doctors, as they've been designated, both rural areas, as COVID isolation centres in those districts, and those hospitals have very little in the way of specialised facilities, and so again will be needing palliative care support at that time. I've also been trying to encourage my colleagues, as many of them are very frightened and nervous about what is coming as we look at the pattern across the rest of the world and indeed across Asia, and recognise that in Nepal our lack of medical resources mean that this could potentially be overwhelming. Our church also has been helping to support those who are struggling as a result of COVID-19. Our government has had the country on lockdown for 3 weeks now, which is particularly difficult for those who are manual labourers and require a daily wage for their work. And if they don't work, then they can't obviously earn income and can't buy food. And so NGOs and our church in particular, we've been supporting as they put together food packages for those who are struggling. In many ways, COVID is very daunting as a country because we are a poor country and, like I said, under-resourced. And many people have said that Nepal is not well prepared for the upcoming epidemic. But there is one way in which we are prepared, and that is to do with the situation that we went through in 2015 with the large earthquakes and aftershocks. And although an epidemic is very different from an earthquake, there is one thing that's the same, and that is the fear that has surrounded COVID-19. And one of the lessons that we learnt in the earthquake was that no matter what happened, no matter how frightening, when the earth shook and the mountains quaked, that God was with us through everything, that he is faithful, that he is good, and that he never leaves us, no matter how dark the path ahead and how frightening the storm clouds gathering. And so we are reminding ourselves, our church, and our colleagues also of the hope that we have in Jesus, that he promises to be with us no matter what comes ahead and be with us through the storm. And also, as we remember at Easter, the new life and the hope that he brings, that resurrection is part of the good news that he brings, that death is not the end, and that we have hope and a future because of him. And so in these ways, Nepal in some ways is more prepared for what is coming, because we have been through frightening and difficult times, and we have learnt God's faithfulness on that hard road before. And so we are reminding ourselves afresh of those lessons as we encourage one another not to be afraid, for he is with us and will never leave us.
Hello, I'm Deputy Director at KISC, which is Kathmandu International Study Centre, and about 3 or 4 weeks ago the government called that all schools should be closed. So we had plans to close, but we wanted to carry on as long as possible. But as soon as the government said we were to close, we closed straight away, brought our Easter holiday forward, extended it by a week. Caleb's year and other A-level years had their mocks to do, so Caleb had a busy week. He had about 15 exams to do over 6 days, and Helen and I invigilated those. And so for the academic side of our school, it's been carrying on. The teachers are preparing online schooling, and the girls will start online through Zoom and Redico and Google Classroom from tomorrow. Caleb gets an extra week off because he had his exams. And so it's going to be a very difficult and challenging time for this final term of the year. We finish in mid-June. It's meant to be my last term at KISC. I'll be finishing at KISC at the end of June, when I take on then the role of the chair of the board from next year. And in the meantime, carrying on with my master's in transformational leadership, which I'm doing from All Nations in the UK. This quiet time for me has allowed me to do a bit more study. I've been getting a big essay done through this last week. But for the teachers, they've had a lot of extra work to prepare all the lessons for the online teaching and learning that starts tomorrow, like I said. So I think they'd really value your prayers for that. KISC is owned by a Nepali charity or NGO called HDCS. And they run 3 hospitals, 2 special needs schools, as well as radio outreach into the communities. And the hospitals are really struggling at the moment, not for overload, but people aren't going to the hospitals, and all the income comes from the patients. And so their income has been decimated, and the doctors are struggling to get paid. And so we've really had to look for support overseas to support the hospitals for income. And fortunately, some big supporters, including BMS, are looking to support the salaries of those doctors, nurses. The government have said they have to stay open because the HDCS hospitals have been allocated as COVID hospitals. So they don't have a choice to stay open, they have to. The government have said they'll help out in salaries, but unfortunately, as we experienced in the Nepal earthquake, the government promised free healthcare, but then don't pay for it. So we're really hoping this time they really do step up. So again, you know, there are some difficult times within our community for providing the support that is needed in healthcare, in special needs education, as well as in the education of the mission community that KISC is working in.
We'd like to ask you if you'd join us in praying for a few areas of Nepali life, please. Particularly if you would pray for KISC, for the staff and the students and the leadership there. They are embarking on online learning from this week, and so we ask that you pray that the technology works, the internet is effective, that the students can engage and learn and be encouraged by interacting with their peers and their teachers, and for the teachers as they prepare this material. Also for the leadership of KISC as they work out how to manage in this changing environment that we have here in Nepal. We also pray for HDCS, for their rural hospitals, particularly Rukam and Lamjung, as they're trying to deliver compassionate care in difficult circumstances and with a lack of resources. If you would pray for Patan Hospital, as they are the lead COVID hospital here in Kathmandu, that all of their preparations and planning would go well, and that we would be able to be an encouragement to the community there, particularly for my colleagues as they are facing a potential increase in cases and are very nervous about that. Also pray for the government of Nepal as they try to seek the way forward for the country. At the moment we have few cases, but next door to India where the cases have gone up, and as a poor resource country this is potentially very daunting, but also there are massive impacts on the economy where tourism is down to 0, and that's one of our major sources of income. And there are concerns about a famine in the coming harvest season as a result of crops not being able to be sown. And those who are migrant labourers have been struggling to get back to their villages and struggling without income from their day labouring work. So pray that the church would be a source of light and hope and encouragement, and that the government would have wisdom and discernment and be wise stewards of the resources that they're being given from overseas countries and from NGOs. Thank you for your support, thank you for your encouragement, and we pray for you also in the UK, that you too would be light and hope in a difficult time, and that you would find opportunities to share the joy and the new life that we have in Jesus, even when the future seems uncertain and changing, that he is our rock and our anchor through the storm.
Philippians 4 verse 8 says, "So keep your thoughts continually on all that is authentic and real, honourable and admirable." Get the next one. Honourable and admirable. Throw away. Beautiful and respectful. Pure and holy. Merciful and kind. And fasten your thoughts on every glorious work of God, praising him always.
Hi guys, I am so glad that you are here. I'm so glad that you joined us this morning. And amongst everything that is going on, I just hope you're okay. I hope you're doing all right. I hope you're doing well. And I hope that this morning helps a little. I just want to share a little something with you that me and God have kind of been chatting about through these few weeks. And it kicks off with the story of Mary and Martha. And if you want to know where that is in Luke 10, verse 38 to 41. And I'm just going to read it for you. It says, "As Jesus and his disciples were on their way, he came to a village where a woman named Martha opened her home to him. She had a sister called Mary who sat at the Lord's feet listening to what he said. But Martha was distracted by all the preparations that had to be made. She came to him and asked, 'Lord, don't you care that my sister has left me to do the work by myself? Tell her to help me.' 'Martha, Martha,' the Lord answered, 'you are worried and upset about many things, but few things are needed, or indeed only one. Mary has chosen what is better, and it will not be taken away from her.'" I love this story. I think about it a lot. I don't really know why. One of the things I love most about it is that if you scratch a little bit at the surface of this story, you will very quickly realise that this story, in its context, in its own context, historical, cultural, social context, is about a lot more than two sisters fighting over chores. We can kind of make that the moral of the story, and it's a beautiful moral of the story. There's nothing wrong with, this whole sitting quietly versus doing a lot kind of thing that we tend to do. It's great, but actually in its own context, there's a little bit more to it than that. You see, in first century Middle Eastern, particularly Jewish homes, which is what Martha's home would have been, a first century Jewish home, men and women who were not in the same family were not allowed to mix. So socialising out in the open between men and women was kind of, not ideal, but it was out in the open. But doing it behind closed doors was an absolute no-go. So what would happen was when they would have company over, half of the house would be for the women, it's where the women would reside, and half of the house would be for the men. And there'd be a tiny, tiny little corridor in between, which was mainly for passing food and stuff through. They weren't to cross into each other's boundaries. Those worlds were not to cross for all kinds of social and cultural and religious reasons. Men and women were supposed to remain separate in two completely different parts of the house. And yet you'll notice in this story that Mary is sitting with the men. She's sitting with the men. She's in the part of the house that she's not allowed to go, and she's sitting with men. This was not at all done. This was trouble. Mary was being a troublemaker here. But more than that, it has this really important line. It said that Mary who sat at the Lord's feet. Now that means two things. That means she was sitting close to Jesus, sure. But that also is a Jewish term for a rabbi teaching a student. Okay? Bear with me. So to sit at a person's feet means to learn from them, to make yourself a student of them, to become their disciple or to become their apprentice, to be invested in by them, to tell the world, I come under their authority, I come under their wisdom, I come under their teaching, I sit at their feet. So when people used to talk about which rabbis they followed and who they were learning from, they would say, I sit at the feet of so-and-so. I sit at the feet of so-and-so. So Mary, by going into the man's part of the house and sitting at the feet of Jesus, learning from Jesus, she's assuming the role of a student. She's assuming the role of Jesus' apprentice. She's assuming the role of a disciple. And yeah, you probably guessed it. Women weren't allowed to do that. They were absolutely not allowed to do that. Women weren't even allowed to go to school. They were not allowed to sit at the feet of a teacher. They were not allowed to sit at the feet of a rabbi. They were not allowed to be someone's apprentice. You see? So there's a lot more going on in this story than Mary being lazy. It is so much more countercultural and important than that. So when Martha comes out and says, Jesus, don't you see what Mary's doing and don't you care? That's not Martha saying, Jesus, don't you see that Mary's leaving me on my own and I'm drowning in all of this work? It's not just that. It's also, don't you see that Mary is not in her place? She's not doing what is expected of her. Don't you see that? And Martha might have been the only one who verbalised that, but she definitely would not have been the only one thinking that. The first people to read Luke's letter, which we now call Luke's Gospel, would have felt a bit sick at what Mary did. It would have been that culturally offensive. And something happened to me this week where I was thinking and sort of processing and praying this story through with God, as I do quite a lot, because like I say, something about this story hits home to me. A thought popped into my mind, and it is way too profound to be my own. So I'm going to guess that it is all of God. This phrase came into my mind, and it was simply that the most defiant thing that Mary could have done in that situation was just to stay where she was. The most courageous thing, the most unexpected thing, the most countercultural thing that Mary could have done, the thing that would have caught everyone's attention would have just been to just stay where she was. If you read the story, there's no mention of Mary budging here. She doesn't succumb to anything. There must have been something inside her resolve that said, this man, Jesus, changes everything. I'm not going anywhere. I'm not going anywhere. I am staying where I am. And that is the most defiant thing she could have done, is just to stay still. To stay where she was. To stay with Jesus. It's radically good. And as that thought popped into my mind, and I was a little bit floored by it, oh wow, okay. And then it got my mind racing, and I felt like maybe God is saying to us that the most defiant thing that we can do in every season, but of course this is an unprecedented season, so this season in particular, but in every season, is to stay. Now hear me, okay? What I am not saying is that we sit still through life and we float through life. That is not what I'm saying at all. Life is busy. Life is full on. Life is all go. Life is hectic. Life demands 110% of us a lot of the time. That's just life. And that is this season in particular. For many of us, I know that this season is the busiest we've ever had, that things haven't slowed down, they've sped right up, that things haven't got less intense, they've got more intense. And we are all dealing with this situation in very different ways. Some people are dealing with financial crisis, and other people are dealing with a workload they can't keep on top of. Some people's work has become unsecure and unsteady and sort of unexpected for them, and other people's work has become busier than ever. Some people are dealing with health issues, and some people are dealing with being lonely and relational issues. We're all dealing with this very differently. We're all getting different sides of this emergency. And what I'm not saying is that we just shirk all our responsibilities and say, who cares, I'll just sit still. I know it probably doesn't need me to explain that, but obviously that's not what I'm saying. But I felt like what God said to me through this story, through, mentioning that the most defiant thing Mary could have done was stay, is through it all, through all of the change in this season and the one past and the ones to come, through all of that, while we're being pulled in all kind of crazy directions, while life shifts and changes and pauses and speeds up and all of that, that our heart, that our mind, that our faith, that our peace, our hope, our joy, that our gaze and our perspective stays still, that we stay on Jesus. That's what I feel like God was saying through this story as well. Everything's changing and everything's, uncertain. I'm staying right here. Heart-wise, mind-wise, perspective-wise, faith-wise, peace-wise, joy-wise, hope-wise. I'm staying. I want some of Mary's attitude where she says, I'm not budging. I'm not going anywhere. Whatever happens in this season or seasons to come, I'm sticking with the one who tells me that he's bigger than this. I am sticking with the one who tells me that he's got me covered whatever comes my way. I am staying with the one who tells me that he knows what I need before I even ask him. I'm staying here. I'm staying with him. I am fixing myself and I'm refusing to move away from the one who was the same last year, this year and next year, yesterday, today and forever. I'm not going anywhere. I'm not moving. I am staying here. I feel like that's a challenge, but also an encouragement for us to say, I'm staying here. I'm not moving. I'm not going anywhere. It's a joy that we get to say that we get to anchor ourselves onto the one person, the one thing that never changes. Whatever is happening in us, we're loved. Whatever is happening around us, we're seen. Whatever is happening above us or beneath us or whatever, we're known, we're understood. I'm not moving from that. I'm not moving from knowing that. I'm not moving from trusting in that. I'm not moving. I'm staying still. I'm staying on that. I'm fixed onto it. And I feel like that's maybe what God is wanting to say to us today. And there's this other little thing that she says, that Luke says, Luke is not she, that Luke says, or it says that Mary sat at the Lord's feet, refusing to move, refusing to go anywhere that he wasn't. And she listened to what he said. I've been really struck, literally since day one of lockdown, I've been really struck with this idea that this is a moment in history. And it's a really odd feeling, isn't it? Like living through something that you know will be written about and looked back on and studied for decades to come, centuries to come, I don't know. We are living through a moment in history. It's odd, but we are. And what I hope will be a relatively short moment in history, but a moment in history none the same. And I was struck literally on day one of lockdown because my mind tends to be everywhere but in the present. It's just the way I am. Maybe you're the same. My mind was struck with this idea that I do not want to miss what he is saying in this moment. I do not want to miss what God is doing in this moment. Things that he may never say and may never do again. I am determined, and some days are more successful than others, but I am determined not to miss what he is speaking into this unprecedented, never before, hopefully never again moment. I'm not missing it. I'm not missing what he says in this, because I know that he's going to be saying things to me, to my town, to my family, to my church, to the church, like capital C. I know that God's going to be speaking things in this moment in history that will echo through the rest of my life. I know that in 5-10 years' time, when I'm going through other stuff, I'll be able to say, God spoke to me when everything was shut down in isolation. He said this to me, and the goodness of that is going to carry me through seasons to come. I'm not missing it. I'm not moving away into fear and into doubt and into anxiety. I'm staying where I am so that I can listen to everything he has to say in this moment. About me and through me. About people I love. About people I've never met. We don't want to miss it. I've been so hit with that. We don't want to miss what he is saying in this. He didn't cause this. Like, please don't get me wrong. That's a whole different conversation. But God's speciality is flipping things upside down. He will flip what was meant to destroy and it'll bring life. And he is really good at using situations to draw closer to us than ever before, to speak louder than ever before, to love brighter than ever before. And that is what he's doing, and I refuse to miss it. I refuse to miss it. And so that's all I really have to say. It may not be that profound, but it's what I feel God is speaking to us. Just stay with me. Like, not me, God. Just stay with him. Refuse to move from him. He says that he's got you. He says that he fights for you. He says that he has called you by name and you are his. Refuse to move from that. Stay in that. Stay with him. And if you're watching this morning, there's a chance that you may be new and even a little bit uncertain and unsure and maybe a bit skeptical about this whole Jesus guy and this whole Jesus life and all of this. And I get it. But you are here watching this, and I'm guessing you're doing so for one of two reasons. Either you have been tricked into watching this, in which case I'm really sorry, or something about this whole Jesus man, something about his love and his adoration of you, something about his life, death, resurrection, something about the God who loves you more than you'll ever know. Something about that has piqued your interest. Something about that has caught your eye and your attention. And if that is you, I just dare you to go a bit deeper, explore this a bit further, ask a few more questions. I dare you. You've got nothing to lose. Don't go another week of this lockdown without him. You've got nothing to lose, but I would argue an awful lot to gain. So I just dare you, if that is you, just go a bit deeper into this. Do a bit more exploring. We'd love to help you with it. But whether you've known Jesus your whole life or are still kind of like on the edge of like, just stay with him. Stay with the one who tells you that he's got this and he's got you. Don't move. Have a great week. I will see you soon.
The Lord bless you and keep you. Make his face shine upon you and be gracious to you. The Lord turns his face toward you and give you peace.
I raise a hallelujah in the presence of my enemy. I raise a hallelujah louder than the unbelief. I raise a hallelujah. My weapon is a melody. I raise a hallelujah. Here comes
Well, I hope you're all encouraged by the service today. Thank you to all those who took part and for those who made it happen. We trust that we'll be able to continue having speakers to contribute to the services and the songs put together, and provide this sort of service week by week until we can all meet again face to face. Please take opportunities to continue to meet in this way. We pray together on a Thursday evening and on a Sunday morning. We'd love you to join us for that too, and keep talking to one another, and keep praying and watching. I'm going to pray now and close the service, and look forward to seeing you all again soon. Father, thank you for this time and the blessing it is to be encouraged through your word and in song, and remind us of your goodness and your love and your kindness and your grace to us, Father. And we are mindful, Lord, that we need your grace day by day and your amazing love to us. So help us to stay close to you and keep us until we meet again, we pray. In Jesus' name. Amen.